Welcome to CARDESIGN.ACADEMY and the continuation of the full-size EV truck interior I call Ioniq T. In the last video, we focused on the instrument panel. So based on the initial layout that I did previously, I developed the instrument panel. So now with the driver removed, you can see I've developed a design theme for the interior for the main instrument panel. Also, you can see that the interior is designed to be a desk which slides out, becomes a mobile office. So anyway, based on a series of sketches that I did, I'm going to be continuing the development on the interior components. So today I'm going to be focusing on the steering wheel. So I started with a series of sketches that I did in a previous video, just a quick time-lapse video, but just doing some quick ideation on the steering wheel. Now there's been a lot of talk about this sort of open-topped Tesla style pilot steering yoke that Tesla pioneered. The idea is that you completely open up and unclutter the view of the display screen ahead. So that's part of the reason why steering wheels have been evolving more towards a sort of squarish shape, and then ultimately with Tesla deciding to cut off the top of the thing. So it's been in student work for since the 50s. But anyway, I think with a pickup truck, there's still going to be a lot of, with a lot of off-road use, there's still going to be a lot of hand-over-hand steering. I think with Tesla's betting on is perhaps there's going to be this steer-by-wire, or there's going to be this automated parking, which takes over most of the functions that would require hand-over-hand steering. So, but I think with trucks, you're going to still want to have that complete shape. But however, in order to minimize the obstruction of any sort of display screens, what I thought about is just sort of doing the pilot steering open, just bridging the top of it with a very slim, sort of almost blade-like quality. The other unique feature of this steering yoke is that it has to fold down, to flip down and retract into the instrument panel, so that when you are at the job site and you've engaged the mobile office, you've pulled the desk out, the steering wheel folds away and is completely retracted. And who knows, maybe in some sort of autonomous highway driving, you could do the same thing. It's also very important that you have ample space for thumb controls. More and more of the vehicle functions are being controlled on the steering wheel itself. So when I did my initial driving mode here, and I'll delete some of these extra shapes here. So when I did my initial driving mode, you can see I did lay out a basic shape for a steering yoke, and I'm going to use that as the basis for a more complete steering wheel theme. So I really place a lot of emphasis on the steering wheel or steering yoke or steering device, whatever you want to call it, as a core experience of any vehicle interior, because that's the thing that you see the most, you're touching the most. It's really important to get it right, and there's so much functionality to it now beyond just the steering. So now I'm sitting in the driver's position, aligned with the driver's head, and I'm just kind of sitting in a forward view. So I'm thinking also about, again, this sort of view ahead of the display screen, and right away I can see that as long as I keep the top of the steering yoke fairly low and flat, I can minimize the obstruction, and then this sort of hook shape so having this very, very slim steering column in the center of the steering wheel kind of hooking up, that's going to enable the steering wheel to kind of lay down in the folded position. So that's the idea. We'll see how it works in practice. I may end up having to do some adjustments to the instrument panel design, but let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to turn off much of the exterior, all of the exterior. Okay, turn off the exterior, the cut lines, the glass, the headliner, and the tires. So I have nothing but the tub and the main instrument panel. Now, in order to do this, we're going to be starting to deal, as we get into the seat design and the steering yoke design, we're going to be dealing with a symmetrical object. So, so off the bat, I'm actually going to, I've already created a layer for steering, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this guy. And actually, first thing is I'm going to turn on my mirror plane. So now I can see exactly where vehicle center line is. I'm gonna take this guy and duplicate him, send him to the center position. And we're actually going to turn off the rest of the interior so we can focus entirely on the steering system. I'll go ahead and I'm going to duplicate the steering yoke as well and bring that to the center position. Oh, let me do that one more time. I felt it click at center, so that's good. Okay, so and while we're at it, we'll do the seat in another demo. But I'm going to grab these two objects and send them over to a new layer that I call steering. We'll put that in the steering layer. We'll put him in the steering layer. Okay, and then we're going to just proceed to turn off the rest of the interior. So we don't need to see the IP right now. And we don't need to see the tub either. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm also going to grab the sketch. I'm going to grab a copy of the sketch and just bring it right here, so we can look at it as we're doing it. I'm actually thinking about image-wise. I think this is a really cool looking steering yoke. It looks like it could articulate in a couple of different ways beyond just simply folding. But some of these more simple designs might work better. We're going to see what works for the actual folding. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to create another layer. So I'm going to actually call this layer steering package. This will be a temporary layer. And then we can dim this down. We can create another layer. And we'll call this steering. Steering wheel. Okay. And we can put the sketch in there as well for the time being. Okay, so steering package, we can just dim that down really, really dark. And so right off the bat, I'm going to, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to lock this layer, I'm going to lock this. So all we have unlocked is the current layer. So going into my sub D stroke tool, ribbon mode, sub D turned on, and I'm going to go ahead and pick a kind of a light material that can catch the light really well. So I want to try this. I want to try this idea here where the thing sort of bends in the front view a bit. All right. So if you remember in the last video, I really like to work in pure polygons first. So so I work with the polygons turned off until I have everything absolutely spot on where I want it. And I'm gonna try to capture the desired thickness and all of that. So one thing is one thing that's nice to have is to have that mannequin and to put yourself in that position and be able to put your hands right there, to see what the desired proportions should be. I generally believe that a proper steering wheel is about shoulder width, It might be a little narrower than that for a sports car. For an everyday car, generally speaking, I think I think about shoulder width is right. So you can see it's pretty well aligned with the mannequin shoulder. So I've just generally laid out that shape, and then I'm going to take the extrude tool. I'm going to turn on hold auto select loops. I'm going to take the whole. I'm going to grab the whole surface here and just extrude it straight back. I'm actually going to darken this a little bit, just a little bit, so I can see what's going on. And I'm going to go ahead and just straighten up, make sure all the points are nice and aligned and straight. Okay, then I'm going to close out the front surface again. So I want to start to capture this idea of the bending here. We're gonna prototype this thing first and make sure that it's going to work before we try and finish designing the steering wheel. So with that said, I'm going to just move all these edges forward a bit. And it might work and it might not. And then I'm going to connect this across the top as well. So I'm going to put an edge loop here, and then I'm going to grab this little square here and extrude straight out like this. Delete that inboard surface and join it at the center line. Now it's looking a little bit thicker than I'd like. Okay, so I have a basic shape here. Now I'm going to see how this one folds against that hub. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tool belt. I'm going to grab this little guy here and click the button to let's try that again. Trying to remember how to do this. There it is. Okay, so now I can set the pivot point, grab the So the idea is that it would basically fold down against the top of that steering column. Like that. Does that work? Well, now it's out of position, so let's go ahead and put it back to where it was. Let's try that again. maybe that's not the right pivot point. Let's try a different pivot point. Maybe kind of midpoint here. That kind of works. So that way I know I'm going to need to have something that joins the rim of the steering wheel more at the middle section here. Okay, so now that we have the basic shape where it needs to be, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to temporarily turn off the steering package. Now I'm going to really start to focus on the form and getting that squared away. It just feels a little bit balanced to me, so I'm going to try to alter the balance slightly, meaning that the bend doesn't happen right in the middle. It happens, 2/3, 1/3. Ratios are important. Okay, so the other thing that you see is that the top of this thing is actually beveled, so it's not going to go straight up and down. It's not going to go straight across. It's going to actually bevel down. So I'm going to go ahead and start to bring that down. Making sure everything is nice and straight. Then I'm going to start to develop this shape here, the thumb pad, if you want to call it that. And actually, where that bend is it's actually more in line with that. So if you see your polygons start to get a little out of control, it's okay to just delete them and rebuild them. Okay, and then the other thing that happens is the section kind of changes from a fairly squarish section to a more like a chiseled triangular section. So I think there's a couple ways to do that. So I'm just going to start to work with these polys a bit. It's starting to give it a bit more dynamism. What we want to avoid is twisting shapes. But on an interior, it's not quite as big a deal because you're not dealing so much with reflective surfaces. It's starting to look like the intent here. Let's just do a quick check and see what it looks like in sub D. It's quite soft right now, but as we start to add structure, it's gonna thicken up quite a bit. So as I add sections, as I add edge loops, I can start to add some crown and section. So now that I've added a bit more geometry, and we can also really tighten up this top edge here. Let's see what we have now. Yeah, it's starting to look a little more like the sketch. Now it's starting to have that appearance of this top piece here, but I really want to start to get this sort of sandwich-like layered look going on over here. We'll probably end up doing this in a couple of parts. So you can see as I add more geometry, it starts to take on more structure. You can see the more edges I add, the more chiseled it gets, which is what I want. I want it to have a nice structured, chiseled look to it. All right, so this is going to be just a substrate. There's actually going to be multiple components to this, so I'm going to leave it at that. And the next thing I'm going to focus on is the hub of the steering wheel. So let's go ahead and turn our package back on. What I might just do is grab the one I already built and start from that. Now, it does look a little strange. I think kind of biting under like that, it feels a little like it's got a bit of an overbite. Plus, I'm a little bothered by the relationship between this edge this transition and these corners here. So I'm just gonna bring this edge down a little bit. That's better. I'm gonna make it a little more chiseled. Also get this surface aligned. So they kind of read like they go together. Yeah, I kind of like how these transitions are happening like vertically. It gives it a nice precision look to it. But this thing coming out down here would be like an extension. So you still have this hand over hand control. And this could also be, there could be some additional control features there. So I'm just going to go ahead and extrude a little bit of thickness in there. I'm going to match the top here. And then close out the top. Okay, so I put some geometry on it. Just giving it a little more bend. Okay, so now I want to start to give this thing some color and material differentiation. So there's a couple ways to do that. We can duplicate the object and then um, go from there, or and we may do some of that, but basically, what I want to do is give it some different different materials. If you look at the sketch, for example, you can see it's sort of this two-tone material. So I want to start to capture that. So I'm going to select. I'm actually going to make this a darker material. Maybe make this a darker material as well. And then go back to my lighter shade, and I'm going to do this joystick. And I'm just going to overlay it. It's just going to overlap with the substrate. Go ahead and make it pass through. Fill in the front again. You'll see shortly how enriching it is to have these various sort of high contrast materials combined. I'm just trying to align the polygons so that when I start to smooth this out, it all makes sense. So where these two parts join together, put a nice tight edge. So when I go into smooth view, it's like I accidentally deleted an edge. There we are. So now I just need to put the polys in the right place so that when I start to add edge loops, everything fits really nice. It's starting to fit pretty nicely. So now I'm just going to be working these polys to try to maintain a fairly even panel or fairly even separation. What I might end up doing is working the substrate a little bit as well. So for example, I think I want to have a rounder corner here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the substrate again. I do the same thing I just did with the, and you can see as I'm moving it in and out, I can see the gap between the two parts. And I can really control the separation. So you can see it's looking like two very, very well crafted parts coming together. And then adding some metallic elements too will really help. Really help brighten this thing up. Just trying to see what it looks like as a metallic element. That looks pretty interesting. I'm sure we'll get into, once I get into the PC, I'm gonna play around a little bit more with finishes. There's a lot more you can do on the PC with Gravity Sketch when it comes to materials and finishes. But anyway, so I want to do a bit of material separation on the hub as well. So there, I just duplicated it. And I'm going to turn this into the darker material. And then I want to put some white accents on there. One thing I just realized is I'm not on center. So I'm going to have to bake mirrored and redo the symmetry on this thing. I love how it automatically welds. And I can see here that I'm going to have trouble folding this steering wheel, so I'm going to just bring this back a little bit. Before I get too far ahead of myself, I should probably do a sanity check and just fold this steering wheel again. So what I'm going to do is group these together. Just get that little wiggle out of there. So using my tool belt, and again, I think we decided sort of at the midpoint. Let's try a different pivot point. There we go. That's a pretty good pivot point. Close, fairly close. So that tells me it's possible. We're just going to have to slim up the top of this steering column again. Or just bring it rearward and down. Just bring it all the way down here. That looks a lot more dimensional, which I like. So let's try one more time to pivot this thing. Yeah, that works really well. Okay, so let's go ahead and add that material breakup. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to bake mirror it. I'm going to cut the thing in half. I want to put it like a split down the middle. And I want to give it some thickness. Let's go ahead and add that lighter shade. And give it some material thickness. Okay, so now it has a bit of thickness to it. If there's any lines that are getting wonky, it's easy to just delete them and put them back on. So now that I added that hem flange, I'm just going to put an extra edge there. So now if I let's say I mirror this, and bring it back close to the original shape. It's a pretty interesting looking graphic. I'd like to slim this gap up though to a minimum. But I got to be careful not to bring them together to where they join. That's looking a bit more precise. I think I like it where it shows on top in black as well. So I'm just going to grab all of these points and just drop them a little bit. I'm liking that. So to top it off, I'm going to just put some that sort of cross-shaped thumb button there. Actually, let's do it this way. Use the stroke tool, sphere-shaped. Now, is that the right placement? We'll see in a minute. I'm going to group these together and bring them down a little bit so they're a little more comfortable in this thumb zone here. I'm just going to work each point so that these sphere shapes or these tube shapes are kind of halfway into the surface. That's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and group this together. I'm going to save what I have. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the interior again, starting with the tub, starting with the IP. So I'm just ghosting in the driving mode just to have the position of the steering wheel in the right place. So I'm going to bring that out to where it should be. Oh, one thing I forgot to do, I got to bake mirroring for each of these objects here. So now I gotta regroup everything. I'd also group this. Looks like it needs to come up just a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the driving mode again. That's looking really cool. So now if I turn on the rest of the interior, it's looking very compelling. Once you start to add the seats and the door trim, this is going to be a very cool interior. So anyway, that concludes the demo for today. Thanks for watching. Next up will be the seats, so stay tuned.